Hello BookTube! I'm finally getting around to my wrap-ups for August. I had already filmed these and have already returned some of these that were library books, so I don't have anything to show, so I'm gonna have to insert the little covers here because and we're working with natural light, which just completely went away. Yay. So this is going to be all of the fiction books that I read in August, and I read 7 fiction books. Some were better than others. Overall, I think they were very good. I have some individual reviews on these already, so I'm gonna make this relatively quick. The first book that I read is The Unnamed Midwife. I enjoyed this book more than I really thought I would with the beginning. I thought it had a kind of rough start. I didn't really like the language. The font that was used in the diary excerpts was a little distracting when reading on an e-reader. It was a little too fine of a font, so when I was reading and it was night so that it would be illuminated, it became a little hard to read. But overall, I actually really liked this. The premise is we have an unnamed midwife who keeps journals. The world has been decimated by a plague that wipes out roughly 97% of the population. Of what is remaining, only 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 people are women. And in the first wave. The second wave, more women are decimated based on childbirth and complications due to pregnancy, as well as violence toward women when women become a commodity that's no longer readily available. And it's how different women that are unnamed midwife come across how they deal with that. And it's also her as a character. She's unnamed because each time she meets new people, she becomes someone else. And she had to become someone else in order to survive. It's her account that I found more moving, and that I ended up rating this probably a little higher than the overall story that I really would have. The second book that I read was Dawn by Octavia Butler. This was my first Butler novel, and oh my god, I stayed up. I think I tweeted about this, but I stayed up to read it. I started and finished it in one sitting, and it was something like I've not read before. I kept waiting for it to have the normal twists and for the normal outcomes to sort of happen, and I don't want to give too much away, but this was also, I think, a book that I recommended as one of my favorite opening lines. And she's brought back from the dead again, or something like that. And I'm gonna read, I think, more in this series. It's the first of a series of books, and I was really impressed with the writing and the world and how it wasn't stereotypical whatsoever. I think I'm the last person on the planet to not read her, but I didn't. The next book was A Natural History of Dragons, the first of the Lady Trent books. I enjoyed this greatly. This was a recommendation from several people on BookTube, including Winx, and I liked this. I think it was also a recommendation by Claire. I'm not sure. I had several books on here that were recommendations from Claire, and it was wonderful. It was, I did, I think, a complete review on this book already, so I'm not going to go into it, and most of you, I think, have already read it anyway. The next book that I read was Orsinian Tales by Ursula Le Guin. Ursula Le Guin is one of my favorite authors. I, until now, have not read anything that I did not care for from her. And it wasn't that this was bad. It was still her typical writing style, which I do like and I think is very well done. It's just that I normally read her in fantastical fiction, and this was more similar points, but from an everyday, more like typical sort of viewpoint, and I think that just detracted a little bit from her storytelling. I think I gave this one a solid 3 stars, but for me, most of her other books have been rated much higher than that, so I think I prefer her more fantasy and science fiction based literature than I do her more realistic fiction. The next was the first 2 books in a series, and I know these were recommendations from Claire. I have already done full reviews on both of them, so I'm not going to reiterate that here, but I loved both of them. It was His Majesty's Dragon and Throne of Jade. This is book 1 and 2 in the Temeraire series. I'm never going to be able to say that. They were great. I really enjoyed them, and thank you, Claire. I thought that the contrast between book 1 and book 2 and the reflection of society within the dragon. So his seeing it from an outsider versus the main character, I think his name was Lawrence, his perception of what he's been raised in. I think that was great. It sort of it was a mirror for him to see some of the things that he was doing may not be ethical. I loved this series. These are the fiction books that I read for August, and I hope you liked this. And if you have read any of these, or if you have more recommendations, please let me know. I will talk with you soon. Bye.